Welcome to the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast, episode 28. Are you someone who works really long hours? Not because you're forced to, maybe. You could really love what you're doing, but you have an inkling that maybe if you put those hard, long work hours elsewhere, perhaps it could actually benefit your entire life, including, and maybe most importantly for us, the quality of the work you're doing. If this resonates with you at all, join me and Jason VanDevere as we tackle this challenging issue. I'm Francis Wade, and welcome to the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast. And welcome back. And as you can see, I'm joined on the stage by Jason VanDevere. And before I introduce him, let me say a couple of things to give you an orientation to the kind of shows that we do here at the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast, because it's not like other podcasts. While I do have guests, I actually don't interview my guests. I invite them to come on and to get their hands dirty as we try to solve a very difficult, tricky, and sticky problem in the area of productivity. So Jason is our companion today, and while he waits to be brought on fully and to be introduced, let me tell you a bit about how the show works. We spend the first part of the conversation going back and forth, thrashing the problem out, trying to get to the bottom of it and how bad it is and how awful and what happens if we don't solve it. Einstein said this great quote is that if you give him an hour to solve a problem, he'll spend the first 55 minutes on the problem and the last 5 minutes on the solution. And that's a little bit of what we do here. Also, we're looking to achieve a serendipitous insight or two or three. And when there's a serendipitous insight, it means that we've come up with something that we didn't recognize before. It's something brand new for both of us. When that happens, we'll ring a bell. Bing! A virtual bell. And if we get to the end of the podcast and we haven't done it, you'll hear a buzzer. Buzz. Now, the buzzer doesn't mean that we failed. It just means that we didn't have any particular moments of serendipity that we could point to. Not bad, just didn't quite hit the mark. So before I introduce Jason, let me tell you about Albert. It's a quick story. So Albert, he works 100 hours per week on a good week. He loves his company, the demands of his customers, the needs of his people, and he's successful at meeting them all. He's always had a surplus of energy that leaves others in the dust. It's like his secret formula, superpower. But he's missing a sense of fulfillment. And he believes, honestly believes, that working more would fill this inner void. It's always kind of worked. When he was a student, went to a demanding program at a tough college, worked then. And in fact, his fiancee told him that she admires him for his work ethic and she loves him for it. Also, his boss has said, got some good news for him. His work, his hours, his dedication, it's moved him to the top of the line for promotions in his company. And he's being rewarded for his sacrifice, let's call it that. But in the last couple of weeks, his fiancee rescheduled the wedding on her own this time for the third time. Recently, she stopped wearing the ring that he gave her every day. She said, it's squeezing my finger. But he kind of wondered, is there something more going on? So it's bugging him. He's lying in bed. Most nights he doesn't sleep so well, tossing and turning. He's wondering if she's asleep or is she giving him the cold shoulder. So he's starting to think that working harder might not be the answer. And to be honest, the last time he took more than a week's vacation was college spring break 10 years ago. So let's welcome Jason VanDevere. He is an entrepreneur, real estate investor, life coach, and author of The Goal Crazy Planner. Through his products and programs, he's helped over 30,000 set goals for themselves and take action towards them. Outside of business, he is a loving husband and father of a. This was written some time ago. So how old is your
He's 7 months old. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on
7
here.
months? That
Yeah,
corrects my
getting old
knowledge.
quickly.
Congratulations. Is he your first? Yeah, and only
He's
so
our
far?
first one. Yep, first one. Hmm.
Great, great. So what do you make of Albert and his dilemma? Jason,
It's
just as we sort of start off with a quick summary of what we know so far.
Yeah, it sounds painful, but I think there's a lot of people there that can fall into that trap, right? They might not have the feeling of fulfillment that they want, so they just keep working more. They keep working more, and slowly start to forget about the other areas of life, right?
Right. And the truth is, it worked in the past.
Hmm.
It's kind of paid off, right?
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
he has hard evidence that this approach to life and the way he's lived his life, using his energy to
Hmm.
fuel the number of hours that he works, got him a three something GPA. I made that
Hmm.
up. It's all made up. A
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
good GPA. Probably got him scholarships and it got him noticed by his fiance. She was really attracted. Look how hard he works. He's so
Hmm.
cute.
Hmm.
And she probably felt comfortable that someone who works that hard is someone who she could kind of connect her life with for the long term
Yeah.
because
And I
he
think
works hard.
that's a pretty popular thing too. I think, yeah, like a quality like that, it's easy for it to be attractive at first, right? They're really hardworking and they probably want that in a spouse. But then if it continues to the point where they start to feel less important than work, then it's not so attractive of a quality, right? If
It kind of
Yeah.
turns back and bites you, right?
Mhm. Yeah, because that approach of like he probably is somebody who says yes to everything, right? Like, oh yeah, I can take that on. I can take that on. But eventually you just working hard and saying yes to everything, just eventually you're gonna cap out on how many things you can say yes to.
And he has a bit of evidence that something is capping out.
Yeah. And I
But
imagine probably if you're at that point, if you're working 100 hours, you're probably, I mean, like you said, he's probably not sleeping very much. I mean, even if he's not really sleeping very many hours to be able to work that much, you probably also are sacrificing the time for working out. If you're not sleeping, maybe now you're drinking a ridiculous amount of caffeine or, these energy drinks. Maybe you're
I know
working
people who
so
do
much.
that.
Yeah, you're
Yes.
not making healthy meals for yourself. So now your health starts to slip and yeah, it starts to snowball on itself, right?
Right. And turns into like the beginning of a bigger problem, which is why people have
Hmm.
heart attacks on Monday morning more than any other time, right?
Hmm. Yeah. I didn't know that Monday
It
morning.
is said. So they say.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And I
so he's
imagine if you
very driven,
continue,
right? Go
say
ahead.
that one more time.
He's very driven.
Very driven. Yeah. Very driven. But yeah, if things start to slip, I imagine that probably, if your relationship starts to slip, if he feels like his spouse or a significant other is starting to be a little more distant, it probably encourages him to even work more, right? If you don't feel a really strong connection with your significant other at home, then it's easier to justify, well, I'm just going to work more, right? And yeah, then it just makes the problem even worse.
Because his tendency to work hard and long is triggered by any kind of anxiety because he knows how to work himself out of a jam.
Mm-hmm.
So as the
Yeah.
anxiety about his relationship increases, his tendency is to let me work hard and I'll get us out of this jam.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So he's a driven guy. He's also very ambitious. Obviously, he wants to be able to have this full life where he has everything. He probably wants to have kids and probably wants to spend a lot of time with the kids as well, in addition to the 100 hours.
Hmm.
Um, but for him, the enemy in all this is that he only gets 168 hours.
Hmm.
And being
Yeah.
pretty young, because he's in his 20s, he is, I can tell you as someone who has some gray hair, is that youth is wasted on the young. But when you're young, your body will bounce back after all kinds of long hours and abuse. You're a young guy, Jason. You could remind us of what that's like.
Hey, I mean, I can bounce back, but I definitely need my sleep. I really value my sleep.
You do. Okay. You're not
Yeah.
one of these
Right.
folks who can just keep pull a couple of all-nighters and have no
You know,
problem.
I tried that for a while, and it's like, there's times where life is hectic and you gotta, like when you have a baby, you just gotta step up to the plate and
Yeah,
make those all-nighters happen. But
yeah,
as a long term, it catches up with you. And yeah, it starts to get painful. But
yeah. I found
yeah, would
I had a problem with all nighters when I was 18 years old, freshman year. I
okay.
tried one, it did not work, and I said
Yeah, what happened the
never
next
again.
day? Did you pay for it?
Oh yeah,
Maybe even
big
the next
time.
week?
I
Yeah.
said never again. Yeah, it took nowadays. Well, I can't do that nowadays. Nowadays, if I go to bed at midnight, I am a wreck for the next couple of days.
Mhm,
But back then, I probably bounced back after sleeping an extra couple hours. But I said never again. I said I don't
mhm.
know how they do it. I don't
Yeah,
maybe want to know, and I'm not going to find out. So I'm going to arrange my life so that I never have to do one of these things ever again. And I was able to keep that promise.
yeah,
Just couldn't do it.
yeah. That's good. And I imagine, now that you're a married man and, for Albert, it's like if he stays up a really long time and if he's tired, he'll probably find the strength to get through the workday, right? He's got the drive to do that. But probably when he gets home, then it's just like, his significant other, his fiance wants to hang out and do fun things, probably like they
Right,
did when they were first starting to date. And he's like, look, I'm like cashed out for the day. I've been, I slept 4 hours last night. I've slept 4 hours for the past couple nights. We got this big project. He's exhausted. And it's
right.
yeah, starts to eat at that the spark. And what do you think for Albert? What do you think's the worst part for his fiance right now as he's going through this? If you were to paint
You
that
know,
picture.
she's pretty young. They're both pretty young.
Hmm.
So they're not used to, they're not married yet. So
Hmm.
they're still in that honeymoon phase.
Okay.
So I remember being in the honeymoon phase and justifying all kinds of things
Hmm.
that they would eventually work out
Yeah.
because I didn't really have enough experience to know that some things don't work out like that.
Hmm.
So I suspect that she's telling her things like, he'll grow out of it.
Hmm.
I won't stay upset with him. Maybe I
Yeah.
don't need to talk to
It's
him
just
all
a
that
little
much.
phase. It's just a project at work right
Just a
now that's
project
busy. It's
he's
just a one
on.
time.
She
Yeah.
promised that it wouldn't always be like that. That when he gets promoted, it'll get better.
Hmm.
We all know that that doesn't happen that way. But
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
young, you kind of forgive a lot of these things because you don't see them continuing forever. You kind of tell yourself this will change when the baby. When I get married and we have a baby, then he won't spend so much time at work. She's probably telling herself these kinds of things. Is what I'm guessing.
Hmm.
She's fooling herself
Hmm. Yeah.
basically, and him too. Because the truth is, if he doesn't get his sort of head around this quickly, the anxiety that he's feeling is only going to increase.
Hmm.
He's not going to be effective. He's going to
Hmm.
feel more um, a sense of unease is not going to go away. It'll take
Hmm.
him through the wedding and through the baby and through the first, but it won't go away. It'll only increase because he's not really dealing with the source of it. He
Hmm.
may just hope that she'll keep making promises and hope that she keeps being patient and keeps being forgiving, and that'll probably be enough.
Hmm.
Internally, he's probably just barely feeling the beginning of anxiety. But
Hmm.
someone like him, though, given how driven he is, and he's just, I imagine he's a smart guy.
Hmm.
He he thinks that there should be a way to have it all.
Hmm. Yeah. Should
Maybe
be a
he's
way to
one of
have
these
it all.
guys
Yeah.
who, he reads like positive literature, positive thinking literature that says
You can have
basically,
it all.
yes, you can
Yeah.
have it all.
Yeah. Huh. Do you think now that he's trying to do you think he's feeling stress? Like is he buried with stress, or is his excitement, kind of numbing that out? Is he
Yeah.
what do you think? Is he in a constant
Yeah, you
state of
see,
overwhelm?
we would ask those questions because we're a bit older.
Yeah.
But in his world, he's never felt these feelings before,
Yeah.
and whenever he's felt anxious, he's been able to work himself out of it. But
Mm,
you and I know that he's probably feeling 10 different kinds of new feelings,
yeah.
the
He thinks
beginnings
maybe
of problems like
probably
overwhelm,
yeah.
like his health hasn't started to go yet because he's young,
Mhm. He's young.
right?
Yeah. He can
He's
bounce
not.
back.
He
Mhm.
he he- he's he is losing sleep, but he's lost sleep before because when you're young, you're like Superman. If
Hmm.
you're in your 20s, you're like, dude, I could do this. I
Yeah. Sleep a couple hours. I can sleep on the floor for a couple hours and wake up feeling great.
just keep going.
Yep.
You're a
Yeah.
developer. You probably had a few all nighters, no?
I've had a few. Yeah. And hey, I know the pain that you pay the next day. It's real. But mhm. Yeah, I also think probably like in that phase, having lots of demand for your time, right? Like right now, he's super busy. He's probably in his head feeling like this is what success feels like, right? Like all these people need me. And he might not even realize yet that it's a problem, right? It's like, wow, I'm so needed here. I need to
Right.
do all these things. It's the illusion of a lot of growth. Do you agree with
Right.
that?
Right. He
Yeah.
probably has one of those big posters on his wall that says something like "grit." The
Mhm.
more you work, the more you get. So all of these
Yeah. I'll sleep when I'm dead
motivational,
24/7. Yeah.
that eagle flying over, and something like your outputs are only as big as your inputs, or something that makes
Hmm.
him just want to drive more and more, because he's in that kind of energetic, drive for results kind of. He's not very, at this point, not too reflective, because he hasn't
Hmm.
had any major catastrophes. It's just like the inkling of something. She hasn't
You think of
quit.
something.
She hasn't told him, you're spending too not enough. You're not spending enough time with me. I'm off. The wedding is over. So he's,
Mhm.
he's not
He's not
had
there
any
yet.
catastrophe related to his long working hours.
Mhm. Yeah. So it's really just like in evenings when he's laying there at night, he kind of gets those feelings. It's during the day, he's so focused on work. It's when he's home, he's like, oh, yeah, I have this relationship. And that's when he starts to think about it.
Right? Because I think that's most of us most of the time. We push aside those kinds of anxieties and concerns,
Mhm.
and we try to just kind of, you know
Maybe we want to ignore them, right? We know they're probably something to address, but it's way easier to ignore. I think things
just
are
keep
fine.
like.
Why stir the pot with a question of, are we good? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
What? How would you ask that? You say,
yeah,
"We're good, right? Good,
yeah,
great." On the way out the door, we're good, right?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, great. Gone. Because, oh yeah,
Hmm.
she said we're good, so we're obviously good. So
Hmm.
but I think we don't want that. We don't want the bad news. We
Yeah.
don't. We don't want to. We don't want to delve into these sort of anxious feelings in the beginning. We want to just kind of have them go away in the natural course of things. And
Hmm.
for someone like an Albert, they always have gone away in the past.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah.
never been a real catastrophe, as I said, from his really working hard. Um, I think we're always kind of grappling with this question. How much do the early warning signs, or do they mean anything at this point, or is it
Hmm.
just my mind playing tricks? Um, if he probably at some level is thinking that if I keep this up, I'm going to lose this engagement,
Hmm.
and he's probably
Who's had
thinking,
some of those thoughts? Yeah.
yeah, but
Hmm.
they're deeply buried.
Hmm.
He's not.
Yeah.
They haven't even, not probably even in his conscious mind. He's just kind of, oh, no, 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 dismiss
Yeah.
them as soon as they've come up,
Hmm.
and
And
it's a real battle.
probably the success he's having in his career might numb that a little bit. Like, well, why would this fail? Like, I'm super successful, right? Like, look how successful I am. The business needs me, or my organization needs me 100 hours a week, or things would crumble, right?
Right. And he probably
Yeah.
has some role models, some guys who are saying, don't worry about it. When you get to a manager, you won't have to. But it's kind of like your internship. If you're in medical school, you have no life for like a better part of 10 years or whatever it
Mhm.
is. But at the end, when you're driving
Next one.
your whatever, your BMW,
Lexus,
or
BMW. Yeah.
and you're making the mega bucks, it would all have been worth it. So he's probably, in those kinds of, yeah, it's horrible now, but when I reach the promised land, it'll all be worth it, and
Hmm.
my wife will be happy with me, and
Hmm.
this is probably gonna go for a while.
So
And
lots of their relationship is being held together by promises for the future, right? This in the
exactly,
future we'll have this. In the future we'll be able to do that trip. In the future we'll have that time. It's
right.
yeah.
But we
Mhm.
do that too. It's not only an Albert thing. We all do that, right?
Mhm.
We don't really, we're not taught, and we don't really know the early signs of trouble, capital T trouble. We
Mhm.
don't. The 100 hours is not by itself a bad thing,
Mhm.
maybe, or 60 hours a week, or haven't taken a vacation, or I'm too busy to go to get my annual checkup,
Mhm.
or all the ways in which, or exercise, yeah, once a week or so, all the ways in which we kind of shave off a corner here and there, and we justify it in our minds. We're all Albert. He's just a younger, more extreme version of where we're all at, because we're always kind of mulling this over and thinking, and we're always trying to push them into the back of our mind, saying, "Oh, no, I exercised last week, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, that was enough."
Mhm.
We're
Yeah,
always in
and
this
probably
thing.
similar, it's those promises for the future with himself, right? Like, "Well, I'll work out more once I become a manager," right? Then I'll have the budget or the time to go do those fitness things. Or once I right, he probably makes those, "Well, once I finish this project, then I'll start at eating healthier," right? I'll stop eating fast food on the road. And, yeah, kinda making those.
Once we get married, the fiance will settle down and
Mhm.
chew wear her ring every day.
Mhm. Yeah.
We kind of borrow from the future and think that the problem won't. We don't think of the problem. We don't think of it deeply enough. Um,
Mhm.
but he'll continue to create this problem that he has. Why? Because he's so ambitious, and we don't really. There's something in human nature, especially among ambitious people, I would say, and most people who listen to this podcast, I think, are pretty ambitious because they're productivity people. Productivity people tend to, folks, if you're listening, tell me if this fits or not. Well, you can't tell me, but think it to yourself. Does this fit that you're a little bit type A, you're a little bit driven, you're a little bit anal, maybe? You really like to produce great things in your life. You have aspirations that are pretty serious to you in the sense that you want to accomplish them, and you take your productivity seriously, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. Even though my Jamaican accent makes you think of the last vacation you had,
Mhm.
you're here listening to a podcast that tried to improve your productivity. And those of us who are in that kind of realm, it's easy for us to become like an Albert. We just
Mhm.
don't pay attention to the balance, or optimism, and or ambition, and our positive thinking just pushes us in a particular direction for a long, 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 long time. And so we don't really solve the problem that he's experiencing, until what? Until life delivers us an unmistakable wake up call.
Yeah. Yeah, what do you, I mean, could you paint that picture of, if Albert stayed on this path, what do you think are some potential situations that would be that wake-up call that he could experience?
I think you would get married. I think you would have, somewhere after the second child. I had a friend whose son called someone else Dada.
Hmm.
That was a wake up call for him.
Yeah.
But then I've known people to get to where their kids are now, they're now retiring, and their kids are 18, 19, 20, and they're leaving home, and they're
Mhm.
saying, "Great, now I can spend more time with you." And the kids are like, "Who are you?
Mhm.
It's too late."
Mhm.
Basically, it's, no, I don't want to spend time with you. You had no time for us when we really wanted you, and now you want to make up for it, really,
Mhm.
and it's gone. So that's a that's not a wake up call. That's that you already fell asleep.
So you
You
realize you
already
messed it
made a
up.
mess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your wife looks at you and says, "I'm just staying in the marriage for the kids." And
Mhm.
when they get
Wow.
to the age when they can be on their own, I'm gone. And the gig will be up, and you're like, "But what did I do?" And all you get is this kind of look, and that's it. So, you know, there were wake up calls that probably happened before that,
Mhm.
but by the time these things happen, it's kind of too late.
Yeah. And I think you brought up kind of a good thing of you have that inkling, I think you keep calling it, right? You probably would have that gut feeling like I know my relationship isn't where it should be, right? Or those people who they have their kids in that situation. It's like they probably know, right? There's things they know they should be doing.
Mhm.
And they have that gut feeling. And it's you can keep ignoring it, or you can, say, hey, I'm gonna make a change. Hmm.
But they just don't make they don't catch the signal.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see the defect. Kind of like you're
Mm-hmm.
programming and you're you're doing the kind of things like not making comments, putting comments in your code, for example. You're not doing the things that would prevent problems later on. But there's
Mm-hmm.
no cost to not putting the comments in your code right now.
Mm-hmm.
So you're coding really fast because there's no commenting going on. I'm assuming comments are still a part of code, right?
I haven't
Okay.
coded anything for a while, but if you have a problem, it makes it a lot easier to find where you put stuff. Because rereading through code, if you wrote it a couple of years ago or even months ago, it's like, what was I? How is this
Yeah.
train of thought all connecting together here? And you got to basically reteach yourself the whole thing if you don't have those comments of like, here's this. Yeah. Is that kind of
So in
what you're
that
getting at?
world, there's very clear costs for putting stuff off, and in the world that the regular human world, and in the world of devoting a lot of time to work,
Hmm.
there are these very weak signals
Hmm.
that tell you that something is wrong, something is
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. What do you think are some of the main ones that he's receiving? I mean, his fiance, her ring is getting too tight. Cold
Yeah.
shoulder. What else do you think might be small, little subtle signs that
Ye-
he's working
ye-
too much?
I know the older I got, the more I noticed. So
Mm.
like, if I think of myself, I was pretty ignorant young guy
Yeah.
that if I saw anything, I would dismiss it so
Mhm.
quickly that it didn't register. But no, it doesn't take much. My wife doesn't have to do much for me to go, whoa,
Mhm.
what's up?
Mhm.
It just, a look on her face, uh, tone of the voice, a text that's kind of looking a little short in
Mhm.
terms of the words. Um, it could be any one of the,
Yeah.
or
I think
some,
those are good examples, though. They're subtle, and it's like you notice them, and you have the option to like, okay, we can sit down and have this conversation, right? But it's gonna take time. Or you can just be like, well, she says everything's fine, or she didn't say there's a problem, right? It's and just kind of ignore it. But there's been those little subtle nudges that there's something going on.
yeah, maybe the for an ambitious person, maybe if if there's a back and forth going on in your head like that,
Hmm.
no, but yes, but no, but yes, but then that's a that by itself, the back and forth is a signal,
Hmm.
and it's always a signal.
Hmm.
No, what's it a signal of is a better question than is it a signal? Because if you can't decide if it's a signal or not, that indecision is by itself a signal.
Signal, yeah. And worst comes to worst, you ask them, "Hey, what's going on?" Right? And well, maybe for the wife example, if she tells you nothing, everything's great. I feel like that's when what's on your mind? Nothing. It's like really, uh,
Right.
yeah. But that's a big sign that most time there's nothing on somebody's mind. If it's more like, well, today this happened, right? But when there's nothing, yeah. So it's just you can ask. But I think you bring up a good point. If you're trying to figure out if you're stuck in that point of indecision, that's a signal something's going on. Just
Right.
yeah, dedicate the time to figuring it out.
Right. And the most he may say or argue with himself and say, "There's I can't work any more than I am.
Hmm.
I'm already maxed out. I have 168 hours per week, and
Yeah.
on some weeks I'm pulling 100 hours.
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can, which kind of I can't do more.
Yeah.
So
Like when
nobody can
you
ask more of me."
once you start making excuses for yourself, is that kind of right? Like, well, I can't be doing that because of this reason, this reason, this reason, right? When you start making those excuses to yourself, that could be another signal. Why doesn't she understand? Like, I don't have time to do those dates because of this, 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 this. And it's, yeah, if you're continuing to make excuses for yourself like that, it's a sign,
Right. Right.
right? You've lost control a little bit.
And he doesn't really have a method of going from excuse making to problem solving.
Mhm. Mhm.
So he not he Albert can't even go there because he's still in excuse making in our
Mhm.
story. But I think over time, as you become better, more attuned to excuse making, and you also kind of figure out some other that there should be some other kind of solutions. So you move into a more productive. So as opposed to arguing in your head that this shouldn't be happening and is it happening, and you spend more time in addressing the problem, figuring out the problem rather than wondering if the problem exists.
Mhm.
What do you think of
Mhm.
that?
I think that's good. Yeah. Yeah, if you're wondering this problem exists, then it exists, right? And you need to just kind of label it for what it is and yeah, work on clarifying it. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah, and then move on quickly.
Yeah, act on it
Yeah,
quickly.
you could speedily move on to problem solving, but you'd have to give up the denial.
Mhm. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and maybe it's realizing that some of these things aren't always an easy fix. If you're a really motivated person and you're very driven, you're looking for like the really quick fix,
Yeah,
right? And
right,
it's like sometimes
right.
you just gotta you gotta sit in it. You gotta accept what your the consequences of what you've been doing and own up to them, right? It's not like, oh, well, I've been a bad fiance for the past 6 months. I can pick up some flowers and now we're good for another six, right? It's like, no, you
Right,
gotta, it's not just a quick fix. It's not just the flowers. Like we gotta make changes here. And it's,
right. And I think that gives us all a reason to maybe pay attention to what's happening with Albert, because we all kind of prefer a quick fix.
Mhm.
But one thing I noticed is that as I've become more mature, older, is that the quick fixes aren't available to me the way they were before.
Hmm.
So one thing we say in the task management world is that I recorded this for the first time a few weeks ago or last week. Every level has its devil.
Hmm.
So when you're younger, quick fixes in terms of task management would actually work. But then as you manage more and more and more tasks with greater skill, then the solutions of yesterday or yesteryear stop working.
Yeah.
And you've now got to do exactly what we're talking about. You got to pay more attention than you used to,
Hmm.
because the shortcuts aren't available to you anymore.
Hmm.
It's a little bit like, being a great football player in high school. Being a great NFL player is a totally different kind of
Hmm.
activity. And the coaching that
Yeah.
you got when you were in high school was good for a high school player. But in NFL, that's not the coach that you want to listen to,
Hmm.
because the level of play is way more sophisticated, and the players that you're playing are so much far better that little high school stuff doesn't cut it.
Hmm.
You need way better analysis. So we don't have coaches for most of us in terms of our task management. We coach ourselves, but we need to be more sophisticated to pick up on the final. I think I'm getting into solutions here. Huh.
Yeah. Well, I think you touched
I
on
think I
something
switched
good there
and
of
I didn't
like,
even notice.
I think, I think that every level has a devil. I think this is a perfect example of that with Albert, right? Like maybe in the past, if there's extra demands at work, his solution was, okay, I'll just work an extra 15 minutes later tonight, right? And I'll tackle that assignment. But
Right,
eventually, that solution won't take you. Eventually, you tap out, right? Like you can't just say, I'll work a little late tonight. I'll work a
right,
little later tonight than I did last night. I'll just work a little later. It's like, okay, eventually
right,
you need to go to the next level. You need
right,
to, that solution isn't going to work anymore.
right,
And
right,
even with coaching yourself, you still need to take time to do it, right? And it's most people, they don't coach themselves. They never take the time to reflect. And kind of that's where Albert's in, where he needs to do like a self audit, right? He needs to actually coach himself, but he probably
Right.
hasn't had enough time, would be his excuse, right? Well, obviously I have to do this and this and this.
Right. I'm too busy to.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Maybe
it's
that's
like,
the first.
that's why you need it. Yeah.
Right. Maybe that's our first bell then. Our first ding. Right down the time
Yeah.
might be that as you're as you become more sophisticated, the shortcuts aren't available to you anymore,
Hmm.
and therefore your way your way to kick off an improvement is to become hyper sensitive to early warning signs.
Mm. Yeah.
So the first few defects that
Hmm.
the first time that your fiance her voice changes, the tone of her voice start to, you're like, hold on, what's going on here? Is to
Hmm.
be hypersensitive to these things because they're an indicator that your task management system isn't working the way it used to. The way you manage yourself is no longer working.
Hmm.
Maybe that's our first thing is that
I like that. Yeah.
higher skill. The new devil at that level is that you need to pay more, better radar than you ever had before.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of just, you need to be to have your radar on to see when you've tapped out of that level and gotten to the next level, right? You have to be watching for, okay, when am I ready to learn the next skills?
Right, right, right. And I need to be open to it in a way that I don't just rely on the old.
Hmm.
I need to be kind of I need to be willing to be vulnerable and to be fresh in
Hmm.
looking for it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I suspect
And
this happens when people make these transitions in life, like from single to married or employee to owner. I have a friend who just became an owner of a company. He bought the company from the previous owner. And he was sharing, all of a sudden the same conversations he used to have with his colleagues,
mhm,
they're not the same conversations anymore.
mhm,
Everything is changing. And he said, they're saying, "Oh, well, you could just take the money and buy this," and he's like, "You're mad, no."
mhm,
But he
mhm.
used to say that before,
Yeah.
but he can't
Mm,
say it anymore. He's now in a whole different world, and they haven't quite figured that out yet because they're
mhm.
still talking to him like he's one of us.
Yeah.
Eh, He's not one of them, and he's no like, hold on, I'm not one of them. No, no, we can't do. I know I used to like to say those things, but no, we're not doing that.
Mhm,
They're probably thinking, oh, he's there and he was all friendly and he always used to like to spend money. He probably want to spend some money. So they're suggesting ways that he spend money on them.
mhm.
And he's like,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's good, right? He's done a self audit at some point and said, like, I need to stop doing that, right? I need to, yeah, I need to change how I spend money on others all the time. And he realized that and changed himself, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
that's exactly what he's doing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not as if you take a class in this stuff.
Right. Right.
He doesn't have a coach to tell him, oh, watch, because they're going to try and spend more money. They're going to spend more of your money on things that they
Hmm.
want. No, it was really in the heat of the moment. It was actually he mentioned this case. So it was a phone call. Oh, it was a good example. He was out of the office, and he was heading back in. He gave a call. He said, "Yeah, I'm heading back into the office." And someone said, "Oh, why don't you bring pizza for all of us?" And he's just about to say, "Yeah, no problem." Hold on a minute. Where's that pizza money gonna come from?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my freaking pocket to buy pizza for everybody in the office. He said, "No, no, I'll just bring my lunch and I'll go."
Hmm.
So it was
Yeah.
like in the heat of the moment on a phone call in the car
Hmm.
that,
Yeah.
he could have just said, "Yeah, no problem. Yeah, sure, I'll pick up pizza." And afterwards, he could have said, "Hold on a minute. What did I just agree to?"
Hmm.
But he said, "No." He said, "No. We don't even know how much money there is in," and they were implying that they just gotten paid for something, some project they had been on. So now we could spend it.
Mm, I see. Yeah.
Hold on a minute. So it was his vigilance, his just luck. He wasn't. I can't say he brought any vigilance to the party. This was just luck that he happened to notice in the
Hmm.
moment, and he noticed it quickly enough to say no,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then realized that I can't be seen as someone who's going to say yes to these things just like that.
Hmm.
Whereas
Yeah.
before, I would have been happy to, sure, no, I can't because I'm the owner,
Yeah. Yeah. He trusted his inkling, right?
right?
Yeah.
So it's a initially we started off saying this is or implying that the problem was working too many hours,
Hmm.
that was the problem, and that the enemy was you only get 168 per week.
Hmm.
But I think we're framing up a different problem here.
I agree. Yeah. I think now probably the problem isn't that you have 160, however, 167 is how you said hours in a week. It's
Yeah, 24/7.
168. Yeah, it's that he needs new processes. He needs new ways of handling those, right? He's tapped out on just having more. Uh yeah, he's ready. He needs to go to the next level. He needs
And he
new
needs
ways.
to be able to see these new devils at this new
Mhm.
level.
Yeah. I think that's yeah. He needs to be able to see his new devils. Yeah. Because for a while that worked great for him, right? It probably has helped him do well in the organization, just saying yes to everything, working all these extra hours. It's like, okay, but now as you continue to grow, your demands for your time are also going to grow, right? You need to
Right,
figure out those new strategies so that you can actually grow yourself along with those demands.
right, right. So the old solution would be work work longer, harder, and keep going. Just business
Yeah.
as usual. Double down. He had a double down solution to the problem of any kind of anxiety around his performance.
Hmm. Yeah.
No, he needs to pay really close attention to the devil at the new level and take that, and because it's not going to show up the way the old ones did. So he's got to see the new ones for what they are, like my friend with the pizza.
Hmm.
And he's got to
Yeah.
see these new things coming at him from different angles. And then he's got to figure out a way to respond. But our conversation is focused more on the noticing.
Hmm. Yeah. Noticing, noticing that his processes aren't working anymore. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, noticing that there's a new devil afoot.
Yeah, I think probably one of the first things he's going to have to notice is he's probably had in his head in the past, like, how can I work more? Right? Maybe he had that drive, right? Like, how can I go prove my drive? How can I go work more? And he's going to have to notice that he's hit the top where now we need to shift that to how can I actually work less? Right? How can
Right,
I be more efficient with my time so that I can be doing the same amount in less time?
right, right. And that's actually the complete opposite of what he used to do.
Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
if you move to it's kind of I'm an industrial engineer by training, and the one of the philosophies or one of the ways in which we're taught is how can you do as much as you basically used to do, but consume less resources.
Yeah.
So it's a commitment to perform at the same level, but to do so with less time, less money, less people, without eroding customer satisfaction, without reducing quality. So
Mhm.
how do you keep your throughput or your output at the same, but
With the inputs lower.
studiously work to reduce all of the factors, all of the inputs?
Yeah. I like that. And I think maybe one of the things he has to start noticing is they say I think it's once you work more than 55 hours in a week, your
Hmm.
productivity is so much lower that it's actually not they claim it's like it doesn't actually do any
Doesn't do
benefit to
anything for
continue
you to keep
working.
going.
So he needs
Yeah.
to start noticing or even tracking to see, am I being effective with the 100 hours I'm working, right? Like there's might be a little bit where he's got to suck up his pride and be like, look, I could have, if I was focused the whole time I was there, be, if I was showing up as my best self, I could have done this in 55 hours. Because I
Right.
slept 4 hours, well, laid down in my bed and slept right, but was thinking about other things. I was distracted. I had to run 3 times to go to the coffee store, right? Whatever it is. And yeah, start to notice how effective am I actually being with my working hours?
Right. Which would, because that question would lead him to do more with less.
Yeah. Show me has to. Yeah.
Right.
And maybe
So
even just show me he's capable of it. Yeah.
right. And it's not the way he's used to thinking, but
Hmm.
it's the way that's appropriate for this level.
Hmm.
So he's so to recap a little bit, his radar is changing to noticing that it's time to look for a new devil. But I,
Hmm.
I want to credit Danielle Bailey, who I interviewed. She gave me this phrase: devils for levels, yeah, devils for levels. She
Hmm.
popped that phrase and it stuck with me ever since. But so he needs a better radar for the devils, and always be aware that they're going to change and they're going to come at him from different angles as he progresses in his career. And then the next is, what's my objective function in a way? And in this particular example, he's changing from maximizing hours to almost like minimizing hours.
Amazing. Yeah.
How do I, how do I, how do I do? Because he's gonna have kids and he's gonna do this, he's gonna do that, he's gonna do the other thing, and he can't get there with the 100 hour a week or the propensity to add more hours. The adding more hours objective will destroy. It's already destroying something. So he should now change to a new goal crazy. Go back to
Hmm.
your software. The new goal would be something like as few as possible.
Hmm.
As the ultimate efficiency is to, if you're writing back to code writing, if you're writing code, how can I produce the same result with as few lines as possible?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and I don't want to go too far into the solution if you're not ready, but probably to come up with that
We're
goal
into
of
the solutions
what's,
already.
yeah. Okay. So like figuring out how many hours he should be working a week. I think to really do two things with once, have that conversation with his fiance. If you have
Yeah,
that conversation of like one admitting like, hey, I've been working way too much. I'm so sorry. Right. Like how much do you feel like is the appropriate amount for us to have a thriving relationship? Still have the time for fitness, for whatever it is. What should be the target? And I think having that conversation with her is gonna mend things that could have been broken. But yeah, one, it'll give them some accountability, right?
right, right.
Sharing
I
with another
actually read
person.
a,
And
a website or a book. I think I shouldn't. I'm not going to mention the name of the book or the author because I'm fuzzy on the details, but I can put it in the show notes.
Mhm.
But this book recommended that to keep a marriage thriving, you need 15 hours of face-to-face contact with your spouse,
Hmm.
and the
Yeah.
15 hours, 15 hours, you can't be in a movie theater where you can't talk to each other.
Hmm.
You could watch TV, so you had basically kind of rules. You still need to be able to speak to each other, so you can drive,
Hmm.
walk, exercise, cook. There's a whole bunch of things that you can do. It's kind of like a date,
Hmm.
but you can't sit quietly because it's not sitting quietly doesn't count in the 15 hours.
Hmm.
Neither does sleeping. So if you're a listener to this podcast and you think that your wife sleep a whole 8 hours and that should count against the 15, it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
So 15 hours a week is what this guy says in his book. And
Hmm.
he said everybody he mentions that to squawks and says, no way, because he counsels couples who are having a difficult marriage. And they say, there's no way, where am I gonna find 15 hours? And he says, think of this as an affair. Would you find 15 hours if you were having a really juicy affair outside of your
Hmm.
marriage? And they go quiet. Because
Interesting. Huh.
oh yeah, they'd find 15 hours. It was a hot
Yeah.
affair. I mean, they'd be doing all sorts of shenanigans to get the hours in
Hmm.
because it it's not impossible if
Hmm.
you're highly motivated. And his argument is that you should see this as a hygiene factor. And when you dip below the 15, you should see that as an early warning sign of trouble.
Hmm.
And you should reverse your schedule or go back into your schedule. It's another devil
Hmm.
for another level. This is
Yeah.
it's not a problem when you're in that honeymoon phase, first 3 years of marriage. This is not for that. This is for probably that 7 year itch.
Hmm.
Somewhere around there becomes a problem.
Hmm. I think that's a good thing. I like that. 15 hours a week.
15
Find that
hours a week.
with your spouse. Face to
It
face conversation time, not
isn't
watching
necessarily
Netflix.
talking, but at least you could talk if you wanted to. So like cooking is you don't
Okay,
talk the
yeah.
whole time
An
necessarily.
activity, yeah, but not just sitting watching something.
Not
Yeah, I
TV
like that,
because
yeah.
you can talk to each other while you're watching TV, but
Okay,
not
but
movies where
mm,
you can't talk to each other in the movie. Silence is not
yeah,
church,
what's expected, yeah, yeah.
right? Not places you can't talk to each other.
Hmm,
But
I see.
again, it's another level, devil for a
Yeah,
particular level kind of problem.
yeah,
So I think that's the second thing for us then is finding finding solutions that fit. Um, so the first one was the radar, and the second
mhm,
one is finding solutions that sort of really fit the circumstance and require you to have a new kind of goal. So
mhm.
it's really instead of a number of hours per week problem, it's a radar problem, and it's a finding new goals to set, new objective functions, new new
Outlooks or
new objectives, yeah,
strategies,
new goals, yeah, which would then
yeah,
lead to new strategies and new
mhm,
processes. But you'd have to at least commit to something very different, like
mhm,
minimize minimize the hours or efficiency, but you'd have to have that kind of commitment.
mhm, yeah. I think that's good. I like that. Yeah,
But on that note, maybe we could wrap it up.
yeah,
Um, because we've got a couple of things and enough to think about that. Well, we it started off as a 100 hour per week problem.
mhm.
And maybe if we had Albert listening to this, he may disagree because he's like, nah, it's not that bad.
Yeah,
For those of us who know a little bit better than Albert, that little bit more mature, we're at a different level. These devils
mhm,
may sound familiar to us, and I'm hoping
mhm.
that this will really speak to our audience. Jason, how can folks get more of you and hear more about the work that you're doing with Goal Crazy and other parts of your
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, so my website is goalcrazyplanners.com. I do have a podcast as well, the Goal Crazy Podcast. Don't go crazy, goal crazy. Goal Crazy. You can find me on Instagram, Goal Crazy, Facebook, your normal places like that. But yeah, I think probably check out the podcast or check out my planner and see if it's a good fit for what you're doing right now and need help with your time management issues or challenges that you might have. And also, I think a good thing, kind of down the line of putting things on your radar. I think I've told you my planner starts with kind of like a self audit to help you grade yourself in the different areas of your life, so you can see what should be on my radar right now. And that's a really good place to start when you're starting to make a new plan for how to manage your time.
Right.
Mhm.
Excellent. Well, you'll send me the links so I can
I
drop them in
will.
the show
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah. Mhm.
And folks, there's a couple more that I want to tell you about an upcoming episode here on the Task Management and Time Blocking podcast. Uh, Keep listening. There's more to come in just a couple moments. Thanks for coming on, Jason.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much for having me. This was fun.
great. Keep listening. Virtual Summit. Here's a 25% instant saving on your purchase of any ticket or content package. Simply visit timeblocking summit.info/subscribe-to-podcast. And here's a clip from our next episode with Dr. Melanie Wilson.
Well, there are so many options, and she doesn't even have a metric for knowing how to evaluate these apps. What should she be looking for specifically? How does she try them out without completely disrupting her life? So it's definitely a quandary.
And if you want to leave a comment about this episode or any aspect of the work that we're doing here at the Task Management and Time Blocking Podcast, you can go over to www.replytofrancis.info and send me either a message by text or send me a voice message, a voice note. And as you probably know, we have a couple of places that you can interact with other people, talk about this episode. One is at the community, mightytaskers.scheduleu.org, and you'll see the link in the show notes. And the other, of course, is our upcoming Task Management and Time Blocking Summit coming up in March. Two outstanding opportunities to interact with other people about the ideas that you've heard on this podcast or any of our episodes that are coming up. And if you'd like to support the work we're doing, I invite you to click on the Patreon link below to make a donation. And please don't forget to like our show and recommend it to others on iTunes, Stitcher, Google, or whatever podcast app or service you're using. This is Francis Wade. I'm signing out. I hope to see you on a future episode. And until then, take care and all the best. See you later.